multiple representatives placed a wreath at the base of the flag in honor of those lost in the tragic events that day. Our high school resource officer, Master Deputy Baker, accomplished by
I will now read the timeline of the tragic events that occurred that day. 7:59 a.m. American Airlines Flight 11 takes off from Boston Logan International Airport, bound for Los Angeles International Airport. 8:14, Flight 11 is hijacked. 8:14 a.m. United Airlines Flight 175 takes off from Boston Logan, also bound for Los Angeles. 8:20 a.m. American Airlines Flight 77 takes off from the Washington Dulles International Airport, also bound for Los Angeles. 8:42 a.m. United Airlines Flight 93 takes off from Newark International Airport, bound for San Francisco International Airport. 8:42 to 46 a.m. Flight 175 is hijacked. 8:46 and 40 a.m. Flight 11 crashes into the North Tower of the World Trade Center between the 93rd and 99th floors. 8:50 to 54 a.m. Flight 77 is hijacked. 8:03 and 2 a.m. Flight 175 crashes into the South Tower of the World Trade Center between the 77th and 85th floors. 8:28 a.m. Flight 93 is hijacked. 8:37 and 46 a.m. Flight 77 crashes into the Pentagon. 9:59 a.m. The South Tower collapses. 10:03 and 11 a.m. Flight 93 crashes into a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. 10:28 and 22 a.m. The North Tower collapses. I will now be followed by our battalion commander, Michael McCoy.
Today we gather to remember those who we cherish so dearly, the lives of the great men and women of this nation. For many of us, a loved one was lost, a friend, or maybe even a colleague. But nevertheless, many good people lost their lives that day. A terrorist organization by the name of Al-Qaeda coordinated a series of attacks against our nation. The events that transpired resulted in the deaths of 2,977 people and the injuries of more than 6,000 others. On September 11, 2001, at 8:45 a.m., American airline Boeing 767 crashed into the North Towers of the World Trade Center. Then 18 minutes later, United Airline 175 was collided into the South Tower. Later, a third plane was flown into the Pentagon. In Arlington, Virginia, United Airlines 93 was a passenger flight that crashed into a field in Somerset County, Pennsylvania. The passengers on board overpowered the hijackers, boarding their plane. Unfortunately, there were no survivors. Now a word from our Command Sergeant Major.
A day that will forever live in infamy. 9/11 had an important reaction out of the U.S. When the Twin Towers ultimately collapsed, it was due to the damage sustained from the impact and the resulting fires. There were many lost in different situations on this day, with almost all 4 crashes being in different locations. In total, the third and fourth attack killed nearly 3,000 people from 93 nations. 2,753 were lost at the Pentagon in Virginia. 44 people were lost on Flight 93 in Pennsylvania. This tragedy was a day I believe that most people won't forget and will always remember where they were when this attack happened. To cope with this event, people turned to their faith to help make sense of the unbelievable incident that took place on September 11, 2001. With this day of sorrow, there was the day to remember when they started construction in 2006 on the remarkable 9/11 memorial. It was built and then finished by 2011 in New York to save the memory of the people we lost. I will now be followed by Battalion Executive Officer Haley Boyle.
Two flight attendants on American Airlines Flight 11 calmly relayed information about the hijackers that would help the FBI in the investigation. According to ABC News, okay, my name is Betty Ong. I'm number 3 on Flight 11, and the cockpit is not answering their phone. And there is somebody stabbed in business class. And we can't breathe in business class. Somebody got maced or something. Telling someone at American Airlines Reservation Center, explaining everything that had taken place just like Ong, Annie Sweeney did the same. During her call, she was disconnected and called back. However, this time she hears a familiar voice. She had explained everything. Despite the situation, these brave individuals spoke calmly. It took at least 20 minutes to give all the information to the American Airlines Reservation Center before the plane had hit the North Tower. If it hadn't been for these 2 brave flight attendants, the FBI wouldn't have been able to jumpstart the investigation. Another fallen hero named Luis Alvarez, who served in the Vietnam War as a sergeant in the Marine Corps and served 20 years in the New York Police Department, was a first responder on 9/11 that saved many lives from dying in the flames of collapsing buildings. Alvarez recently passed away at the age of 53 from colorectal cancer, which was linked to the 3 months he was at the World Trade Center, searching for survivors and the remains of his fellow officers. Alvarez, who was a father of 3, spoke about the September 11th Victim Compensation Fund at the House Judiciary Subcommittee in Washington, D.C. In his speech, a phrase that captivated the committee and was, I quote, "You made me come here the day before my 69th round of chemo. I'm going to make sure that you never forget to take care of the 9/11 first responders." I will now be followed by our battalion commander who will conclude today's ceremony.
We call upon the American people to remember how we all felt on September 11th, to remember not only the unspeakable tragedies of that day, but how we came together as a nation. Unity of purpose and unity of effort is the way, as Americans, we should thrive to continue to move past this terrible disaster. In conclusion of today's ceremony, we would like to thank all of our servicemen and women, past and present, for serving our great nation. We would also like to extend our thanks to our cadet staff, color guard and hawk band, and the first responders for providing their time and effort to bring remembrance to this day. Thank you, and never forget our fallen heroes. This concludes today's ceremony. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Good morning. So first, I want to just take a moment to say I was extremely pleased with how you guys came in and settled in. But one of the things I think is yesterday walking some classes, there are a lot of you that don't understand why 9/11 is important. And you've been hearing about it because you weren't born then. And so it doesn't have the same impact that it possibly does for your parents or your teachers or your grandparents. So one of the things I want to leave you with is thinking about, when they concluded, they talked about unity. They talked about what it does to come together. And sometimes it takes a tragedy. And as a society and as a culture, in the last 12 months, 18 months, we have another thing that's kind of taken over our world. Whether it's culturally, whether it's society, we've got the pandemic, but it takes us coming together and working together to make this place a better place to be. Whether it's at school, whether it's in your community, whether it's in our country, some of you are getting ready to graduate, hopefully you'll take that into another place. But the reason why 9/11 is also important is we're very fortunate, because most of you might have seen the news to see what was happening right now as we pull out of the Middle East. And you see some of the things that have gone on in that community. We've been very fortunate for a very, very, very long time. Most of the times when wars happen, they're not on our soil. So we go to bed at night, we go to work, we feel okay. We feel like we have great opportunities. It's not like that in other places of the world. And so when you think about what 9/11 was, we hadn't had that kind of incident take place since we had the bombing of Pearl Harbor in 41. So for all of those years, we just got up and went to work every day, never once ever thinking that someone would come onto our soil and do that kind of damage. And it frightened us. It truly frightened us. If you were around, if you have grandparents, they'll remember when we had Kennedy's assassination. So me being in my 20s at that point, remembering exactly what classroom I was in, exactly what happened in that moment. We all hope that in your time, you never have to experience what that did to us as a country and as a culture. But sometimes when you weren't born through that time, you don't understand the impact of why we still celebrate and try to remember, because what we don't want to do is make sure those things happen again, right? We never want to put our guard down. So when we talk about our servicemen and women, we talk about what happens. I just think it's important that, one, you understand why we chose social studies to come to this, but I also understand through some conversations yesterday in the classrooms, they were like, why do we do this 9/11 thing every day? Every year we go through this 9/11 thing. I'm not really sure why. I'm just hoping that as you leave today, that you truly understand the impact of what it did to us on a bigger scale. And understand why sometimes we just got to take a moment. As you guys get ready to go into the future, you make change inside of our community. Never more than now do we still need unity in our country, in our school, and in our community. Thank you so much for your patience. Thank you so much for your respect. You have a wonderful day.